Hey y'all, welcome back to Manly Kitchen. I'm your host Lane, and today we're going to do something using leftovers called shepherd's pie. Let's run into the kitchen and have some fun. Okay, I've got my extra virgin olive oil going in the pan. First thing I'm going to do is put a good healthy spoon of garlic in there. And now some chopped onion and some chopped carrot. Now what I did for the carrots, because I had it in the refrigerator, was I took some matchstick carrots and just chopped them up a little finer. Stir to coat in the olive oil, and now we're going to saute those until the onions are transparent. Now that those have sauteed down a little bit, we're going to add the meat. And what I've got here is leftover steak and a little bit of pork roast and some tri-tip from my favorite barbecue place, House of Chicken and Ribs. And what I do is I take my meat, my leftover meat, and I just freeze it and hold it off. And then when I want to have a shepherd's pie or something like that, I just take it out of the freezer and use it up. Okay, get that all mixed in together and happy. We're going to make it even happier. Now I'm not going to use a lot of salt because I know I've already salted the meat previously. Likewise, I'm not using quite as much spice as I would if I was starting with fresh meat. But we have some chopped rosemary and some chopped thyme. Then of course we had the garlic before. And here's a little secret. A little bit of Worcestershire. Not a whole lot, just a little. And now, go ahead and stir that all up together. So we get the spices distributed and the Worcestershire. Okay, and we're going to let that saute for a little bit. Now that we've got that all sauteed up and happy, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit. See, that wasn't even half the jar of brown gravy. Now you can certainly make your own gravy, and I do that a lot. Beef broth and some flour and good to go. But since I'm doing this quick version and using leftovers and such, I thought I'd go ahead and cheat and use the jar of gravy. But if you want to make your own, feel free to. Now you notice that once I've stirred it in, it's not wet, but it does add to the moistness when you put it in the pot to bake. We've got that all stirred up. Everybody's happy. Let's go ahead and build our casserole. First, let's get just a little bit of olive oil. This is not only to make sure it's easier to get out of the pan, it's also a little bit of extra flavor. Now, first layer is our meat, carrot, and onion mixture. Yeah, I think I'll get away with using all of it. Yep, nice. Make sure it's nice and even. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a good layer of corn over it. Again, try to make sure it's even so it's all properly portioned. And finally, some leftover peas. And because most of the time I'm only cooking for two, we don't always use the entire can of peas. So I'll take what's left over, put it in the fridge or freeze it if it's going to be a while. we like peas a lot, so you know, I kind of collect them up. Okay, there's our veggies. Next are the mashed potatoes. Now I'm using instant mashed potatoes, the little packets. This time it happens to be Baby Reds, and I've got them done, but I reserved a little bit of water until the very end, and I'm going to mix that in real quick, and hopefully before they set up too much. Yeah, see how they pour out now? You don't want them to get too firm because it makes it harder to do this step. Look at that. Oh yeah. Working now. Very important, do not smooth this out. It looks much better once it's been baked if it's got some topography, okay? You want to have some 3D effect. It'll look better, promise. Now into the oven at 350 for about 40-45 minutes, and I'll be back in a little bit to show you the last step. While that's baking, let's talk about this shepherd's pie thing for a minute. It really is what the name implies, shepherd's pie. It was created by sheep herders, and originally it used mutton #1, which is an older sheep. A sheep is a baby, you know, a lamb. Mutton comes from an older sheep, and it was most often done with leftovers. Now, first off, you know, they used everything they possibly could, just like any of the poorer, more frugal people in the world throughout the ages. But secondly, mutton was used because mutton's pretty tough. I mean, you know, you've got that sheep out there running all over the pastures for quite a while before it's slaughtered, and that meant that it had very tough muscles. So this was a way that you could use that meat and you could make it tender, okay? Nowadays, most people use ground beef, but you can use any dark meat, mutton, beef, pork. I've actually done a chicken version of shepherd's pie, and it came out great. You just have to, you know, make a few adjustments. But most people use ground beef. Like I said, I like to save my leftover meat, even if it's a few bites. Rather than throw it out, I'll put it in the freezer. Then after it's thawed for a little bit, the day I'm going to use it, it's not fully thawed. It's easier to slice through and do that small dice that I want to do for the recipe. Always add the onions, always, always, always. Carrots if I have them around. I like to use both corn and peas, but if I don't have the corn, I'm not going to be too upset. If I don't have the peas, I'll use green beans. Always want to top it with mashed potatoes. I have seen some people that do sliced potatoes. That's a pretty cool thing, but I grew up on mashed potatoes and I love them, so I'm going to use those. As far as the gravy goes, like I said, you can use beef broth and flour to make your own gravy, but if you're in a hurry, or you know, if you don't want to tackle doing gravy yet of your own, then go ahead and get you a good quality jar of gravy, okay? You let it bake up, and the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some toppings to it. I'll show you that when it's done baking. Right now everything's over in the oven getting happy and getting to know each other. So I'll be back in just a second and we'll finish up. Now look at that. Is that happy or what? And because it's not a smooth surface, look at how nice the browning looks. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle some shredded cheese over it. And back into the oven it goes for that to melt down a little bit. We're almost done. We're almost eaten. While we're waiting for that cheese to melt in, let me show you what I'm serving with it. Now, of course, we have carrots, onions, peas, and corn all in the shepherd's pie, along with the meat and the potatoes. So I'm adding just some tomato wedges. I've got a little bit of pepper on there and a little bit of crumbled blue cheese. Crumbled gorgonzola or crumbled goat cheese also works very well for this. And then just a little bit, come on, there we go. Just a little bit of buttermilk ranch dressing. Like that. Isn't that pretty? Alrighty, look at that. You can see the cheese is melted in beautifully. I've let it sit for a minute. Now I'm just going to run my thin blade. See if we can define the serving here. Out of the pan, onto the plate. Just a little of the meat, so we just slip it in there when nobody's looking. Now when I do the gravy, I don't like to cover the whole thing. So I take a little extra, run it around the sides. Next, take a little bit more shredded cheese just to dress it up. And a little bit of pepper. And there it is, folks. How about that? So, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go serve this to my sweetie. I'll be back in a minute to close out. So there you go, a quick and easy shepherd's pie. And boy, was it good. And don't take it from me, she loved it too and said I could do it again, so that's pretty cool. And, you know, as I said, I used leftover meat. I used some leftover peas. I added some corn, carrots, and onions, a little bit of gravy, some instant mashed potatoes, bake it for a while, sprinkle some cheese on it, and you saw the presentation. Works out pretty well. Now you'll notice, by the way, that I used my smaller plates. I didn't use the full-size dinner plate, and that's so that a normal portion looked very big. If you put that same portion in the middle of a large plate, it might look small to people. They might think they need more when they really don't. Add a few tomatoes to it, so you got a little bit of salad going. You got a total meal. So, thanks for joining me. I'm Lane. This is Manly Kitchen. And don't forget, play with your food, y'all. Peace.